By the early 1700s, the city of Edo held about 1 million people. No sewers, no treatment plants, and its streets were cleaner than London's. The reason wasn't hygiene laws, it was that landlords and tenants were dragging each other into court, fighting over who legally owned the contents of the toilet. You're probably wondering where Edo even is. That's Tokyo today. Because in Edo, human waste was a commodity. It had a name, shimogoi, roughly fertilizer from below. Farmers outside the city signed formal annual contracts for the rights to a building, paying in rice, vegetables, or silver. Collectors moved through the streets before dawn with sealed pottery jars slung on shoulder poles. A landlord with a big tenement could clear 30 to 40 ryo a year from it. Certain neighborhoods produced waste so prized that it was reserved for growing premium tea. There are even records of people stealing it. Meanwhile, London was pouring the same material into the Thames and wondering why everyone kept dying of cholera. That system ran for over 3 centuries. It only collapsed around 1955 when cheap synthetic fertilizer arrived and made it pointless overnight. Now, this sounds like a story about sanitation. It isn't. It's the clearest example of an idea that runs through the whole of Japanese food growing, and it's the same idea that lets a Japanese vegetable grower pull several times the harvest out of a plot the size of yours. Nothing is allowed to be waste. Everything has to feed something else. Hold on to that, because it explains everything that follows. Start with a word most people outside Japan have never heard: Satoyama. It's 2 characters, Sato, village, Yama, mountain, and it describes a way of arranging an entire landscape that covers something close to 40% of Japan's total land area. A Satoyama isn't a farm, it's a mosaic. Coppiced woodland on the hillside, feeding fuel and leaf litter downhill. Villages at the base of the slope, rice paddies below them. Irrigation ponds, called tamik, stitched through the whole thing. Grassland, streams, orchards, all interlocking, all feeding each other, all managed by the same community for centuries. The woodland fed the fields fed the village fed the woodland back. It's the Edo waste system again, scaled up to an entire valley. And here's the detail that matters for your garden. Nothing in that landscape sits alone. Nothing is isolated in its own tidy square. Everything is layered, mixed, and connected on purpose. Now compare that to how almost all of us were taught to grow vegetables. Picture the standard garden: tomatoes in one row, carrots in another, lettuce in a tidy square of its own, everything separated, spaced out, surrounded by bare brown soil. It looks correct because it's exactly what the back of the seed packet told us to do, and it fights you every single day. Every bare patch between plants is an open invitation to weeds and an open surface for water to evaporate from. Every isolated row is one crop pulling from one narrow layer of soil, leaving everything above and below it asleep. And a long clean line of a single vegetable is, from a pest's point of view, an illuminated sign, which raises a question worth sitting with. When did you last see a forest planted in rows? One Japanese farmer built his entire life around that question, and his answer was so extreme that his neighbors were convinced he'd lost his mind. Masanobu Fukuoka was a trained microbiologist working in plant pathology when at 25, he had some kind of crisis about the whole project of controlling nature. He walked away from the job, went back to his family's land on the island of Shikoku, and started farming in a way that looked, to everyone watching, like doing nothing at all. He called it Shizen Noho, natural farming. Others called it do-nothing farming, and they didn't always mean it kindly. His 5 rules were brutal in their simplicity. No tilling, no fertilizer, no pesticides or herbicides, no weeding, no pruning. The idea came from an abandoned field. Fukuoka noticed healthy rice growing in a tangle of weeds on ground nobody had touched for years and concluded that the plants were not struggling because of the weeds. They were doing fine, possibly because of them. So instead of preparing seed beds, he made nendo dango, clay seed balls, seeds packed into a mix of clay and compost and simply scattered onto the ground where the clay shell protects them from birds and drought until the rain arrives and they germinate on their own schedule. Instead of clearing the ground, he grew white clover permanently underneath his grain and laid the straw from each harvest straight back over the field. His yields ran comparable to the chemical farms around him. He wrote it down in 1975 in a short book called The One Straw Revolution. It has since been translated into more than 20 languages and sold over 1 million copies, and it quietly rewired how a generation of growers thinks about soil. So what is actually happening in a garden like that? 3 things, and they're the same 3 things a Satoyama does at the scale of a valley. The first happens underground, and almost nobody thinks about it. Roots don't all live at the same depth. Lettuce roots stay shallow, beans go medium, tomato roots dive deep. In a normal single crop bed, one type of root works one thin slice of soil and leaves the rest dormant. Stack those plants together and the whole column of earth wakes up, and they start trading. Deep roots haul up minerals the shallow ones could never reach. Beans, being legumes, pull nitrogen out of the air and hand it sideways to their neighbors. It's the woodland feeding the paddy, compressed into one bed. The second thing happens above ground, and it's basically camouflage. Most pests hunt by smell. A moth cruising over a long, clean row of tomatoes is reading the strongest tomato signal for a mile in any direction. Bury that same tomato in a crowd of basil, onions, and marigolds, and the signal gets drowned in noise. The moth arrives, finds nothing legible, and moves on to somebody's tidier garden. You didn't spray anything, you just made your food hard to find. And the third is the one that turns most gardeners into their own worst enemy without them noticing. Think about what you do at the end of a crop. You pull the spent plants, carry them to a compost heap in the corner, and leave the bed bare. Look at what actually just happened. Those plants spent all season pulling nutrients out of that soil. You collected every one of those nutrients and walked them to the far side of the garden. The bed is now empty and hungry, so you buy a bag of fertilizer to replace exactly what you removed. You are paying to fix a problem you created. Fukuoka's answer was the straw. Cut it, drop it, leave it where it fell. It rots in place, feeds the soil biology, and that biology feeds whatever goes in next. Modern gardeners call this chop and drop. Nothing leaves the bed, nothing has to be bought back in, which is, once again, the Edo principle. Nothing is waste, everything feeds something else. So look at what you actually get. Plants feeding each other through the roots, plants hiding each other from pests, soil that gets richer every cycle instead of poorer, a bed that weeds itself, holds its own water, and asks for almost nothing from a shop. There's a reason this faded out, and it's the same reason the Edo waste trade collapsed in 1955. Not because it stopped working, because a bag of synthetic nitrogen arrived and made the loop look like unnecessary effort. Worth noting who started the Satoyama revival. A forest ecologist named Tsunehide Shide pushed the term back into public use in the 1960s, specifically as a reaction against the chemical fertilizer boom that was dismantling those landscapes. He wasn't being nostalgic. He was pointing out that the old system was quietly better at the job. You can't sell a man nitrogen if his beans are making it for free. That is the entire business case against this way of growing, and it's the only real argument there has ever been against it. So tell me, if you tested one mixed bed this season, what 3 plants would you put in it together, and why? Drop your combination in the comments and let's build a few worth trying. And if your family ever grew things this way, crowded and mixed and a little wild, tell me what was in that garden. Those are the setups I most want to dig into next.